Yo, yo. I just stopped for the night at this little mom and pop, and it was like, thank God there's a space left for me here. I drove my clock down till only having 10 minutes left on my clock. And I could have stopped earlier at the place I stopped for fuel, but I had 2.5 hours left. And at the time I was 40 minutes away from this drop and hook. And I was like, okay, these drop and hooks, usually the way that they set these up, one thing that's been really refreshing at this company that's different than other places I've worked is I haven't had a situation where it's supposed to be a drop and hook and it ends up being a live load or live unload. That is a big change, and that's been really nice. This mom and pop has my favorite flavor of vitamin water that is like impossible to find. It's the tropical mango. It's so good. Oh my God. Oh yes. I love it so much. It's a little marathon station. I'm in Louisville, or just outside Louisville, and it's not like a regular truck stop at all. It's mostly just local drivers that like rent space here. And thankfully I managed to get one of the last couple spots that were available, and they have a little restaurant in there, and I got a piece of lemon meringue pie, and I got a BLT, and I'm excited to eat that. Once I'm done, I'm gonna go in and wash my face and brush my tooth and get comfortable. It's already 8 o'clock, which is really late. I need to get a move on so I can watch a little Netflix. I'm watching the latest season of Better Call Saul, which I kept forgetting I hadn't watched, and it's so good. I love that show. And I'm gonna try to read, but actually just fall asleep. And I use an Amazon Fire, and I drop it on myself because I'll be trying so hard to I just want to read like one chapter, and it's like, because I'm passing out while I'm trying to read. I just want to tell you guys about something that happened today, and I wish I had gotten video, and it's on the subject of asshole truckers, because there's so many nice guys out here and good people, hardworking people, but there's some real assholes. I stopped to fuel at this Love's that was also in the Louisville area. It was a pretty small one, and I was behind this truck he was taking so long in the fuel island just sitting in front of me, and I had seen him walk back to his truck, I thought, but I was fueling. I wasn't like watching him or anything like that. So I get back in my truck, and I'm waiting, and I'm I'm like, what is going on? And there's plenty of space. There's spaces behind the fuel island. There's a couple. It's pretty full because it's a small Love's, but there's a couple parking spots there. I say, fuck it. I back up and I go around the fuel island and I go to leave. It's a pretty small lot where it's like you just go around the fuel island and you go straight out, instead of usually it's like you go around and then you go back, and you know, depending on where you're at. And I look over, and this motherfucker is sitting in his cab stuffing fries in his face, and I give him the universal gesture for what the fuck, and he goes, he just keeps eating his fries, and I was like, you fucking prick, like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I was so mad at him, because I was just like, the audacity, okay? But then I was more mad at myself because I pulled around the whole fuel island, so I was then in front of him, and I wish I had thought to stop and get out my phone and go up and take some video of this guy, because it was almost like hilarious, because all the other lanes in the fuel island were basically open at that point, and he was only fucking cock blocking me. And I was like, what is this guy doing? And then the way that he reacted, the shrug, the just like, fuck you, I don't give a fuck shrug. I wish at that moment that I had been some big burly motherfucker to get out and intimidate him, or be like, you know, because this guy was a little bitch, man. I just, next time, Gadget, that guy needs to be shamed. I wish I had had the forethought. Another thing I saw today that I'll probably share on YouTube. I'm going to try to start posting other things besides just regular videos on YouTube. I saw that Uncle Dirk Trucks posted a couple of things. You should take a look. They're pretty fun. One of them is very funny, something he saw on a trailer. Today I was at a rest area. I believe I was in Ohio at this point. I saw in the restroom there was an opioid overdose kit on the wall. And I think that's really cool to see. I mean, it's not cool. It's a sign of a major catastrophe that is happening and has happened in our country. It has a lot to do with the Sackler family, who faces like no consequences, virtually no consequences for what they've done, and the plague of opioid epidemic, addiction, whatever, that they've released upon our country. That's a whole other thing. You should read about it if you haven't. A great book is Empire of Pain. I can't think of the author's name, but that week is a real deep dive. But there's podcasts and all kinds of stuff about the very vile, disgusting, evil Sackler family and Purdue Pharma. Anyway, and there's a Netflix special that was just on, and that was pretty good, and it was very upsetting. But anyway, but there was this kit in the restroom of this rest area, and I assume that it had, what is the stuff in it? I'm blanking. I keep wanting to say naloxone, which it might be naloxone, but I'm forgetting. But it's basically something that can reverse an overdose. If someone is overdosing, if someone is having an opioid overdose, but you don't know for sure that they're having an opioid overdose, this naloxone, I'll put whatever it actually is on the screen. It can't hurt somebody who's not having an opioid overdose, but if they are having an opioid overdose, it will immediately reverse it. I could give more detail of what I've heard, but you don't need to hear it from me because I'm not an expert on it. But I have known and loved people who have struggled with opioid addiction. It is a horrifying plague. It's a terrible thing for anyone to have to live with. There's so many people who have lost loved ones to it. I think it sucks, but I think it's also good to see. It's driving me crazy that I can't think of the name. Hold on, I'm gonna look it up. Narcan. So a lot of places are, like, you can go to pharmacies and you can ask them for Narcan, and you can say, I want to have this on my person in case I need to help someone who is having an overdose. It's very easy to administer. It's a nasal spray, and like I said, it can't hurt somebody who is not having an overdose, but it can save someone's life very quickly if they are having an overdose. There's a lot more to it that I don't know, but if you go to certain pharmacies, they will give you information on it. They will tell you how to use it. You know, you can just say very simply that you want to be equipped to help someone if you suspect that they are actively having an overdose. It's a really sad thing that is affecting a lot of people, but it's good to see more awareness of it, and I think that the more people who talk about it, the better. And I think it's important to reverse the stigma about it too. It's about saving lives. It is a full-on crisis in this country. One of the things that is super terrifying is the fact that fentanyl is everywhere, and it's in a lot of substances that people use to get high that are not things they would expect it to be in. It's important for people to just be aware of what's out there, and to, you know, care about your fellow human beings who are struggling and suffering, because nobody sets out to become addicted to opioids. You know, people don't find themselves in those situations because they're bad people. There's a lot of different things that lead people down that path, and there's a lot of people, like someone who started off with a back surgery or a sports injury, who was prescribed a pain medication and became addicted without ever thinking that that could happen to them. So there's my PSA for the day. I was glad to see that. Yes and no, you know, it's bittersweet, I guess, but that's not the right way to put it. Anyway, long day, but as you can tell, I'm doing a little bit better. So thanks for all the well wishes, by the way. It's good to be feeling better. I'm getting my energy back slowly, so I'll catch you guys more later. Hello, my friends. How you doing? I just got done driving for a long day, which was a good day though, because I was actually coming up against my 11 instead of my 14. It was one of the rare days I've had where I don't have any stops, other than having to stop for my 30-minute break, which just was really nice. It was nice to just be able to drive and cover a decent distance. I got 650 miles under my belt today, and I wish I had more days like that, but I've had a number of days lately where I have 2 stops in a day. I have a live load and or a live unload, so it's just eating up time and keeping me from being able to run the mileage I'd like to be running in order to make the money I'd like to make. So that's been a little bit frustrating, but today was a good day because this was the end of my mileage I could earn for the full week for this pay period. So it ended up getting me where I would like to be every week. So that's pretty cool. I'm stopped for my 34 in Kansas, and it's been a long day of driving in the rain, but I haven't minded it. I've just really kind of been enjoying it. I've been listening to an audiobook about MLMs, and it's nothing new or surprising to me, but it's for those who don't know, that's multi-level marketing companies, which are also pyramid schemes, and they're all like super scammy and insidious, and target a lot of like very specific demographics. And anyway, that's a whole another predatory industry. But today let's talk about trucking. No, okay, one thing has been bouncing around in my mind, and I wanted to talk about this a little bit. Let's talk about the term steering wheel holder, shall we? I've been thinking about this a lot, and it's something that every time I hear it, I sort of bristle a little bit, and I'm like, anytime I hear something repeatedly and it sort of elicits an emotional response from me, I have to think about it and be like, why do I feel something when I hear this? What is it that it's stirring up in me? I hear it sometimes or read it in comments, like people refer in the comments, they're agreeing with something I had to say, and they're like, oh, there's all these steering wheel holders out here. And so I want to ask, without any sarcasm or snark, what to you is a steering wheel holder? And I want to have people respond in the comments. I'd like to hear genuinely, without like just, again, also on from you, without snark necessarily, with like a genuine, what your thought process is. What to you is a steering wheel holder, or quote unquote steering wheel holder? When I hear that term, what I think of is, when I think of the person saying it, the person who's saying it, I imagine somebody who's been driving a truck for like 15 years. They probably drive, to me, what the term comes from is the reference to someone who drives for a mega carrier, who is very inexperienced, who only knows how to hold a steering wheel because they only could drive an automatic truck. They don't have the deeper skill set of a seasoned trucker, who's somebody who, for example, like to me, when I think of a seasoned truck driver, I think somebody who learned to drive on a manual transmission, someone who knows how to drive a truck that has 13 speeds or maybe 18 speeds. And are there more than that? I don't think so. Someone who has driven in all weather conditions, someone who has driven through the mountains, through real mountains, through Donner Pass maybe, who is not so scared of that as someone like me would be. And I would be fully clenched in those situations, as I like to put it. I think of somebody who's seen a wide variety of things out on the road, who has experienced different types of breakdowns, who knows how to fix things on their own truck, who carries all the appropriate tools to be able to do that, who knows how to chain tires, like all of the things. That's what I think about when I think about a seasoned truck driver, somebody who really knows what it's like out here, somebody who has been in the industry long enough, maybe someone like my dad who originally started trucking in the 70s before I was born, and saw, you know, some of the things that have changed in the industry because they were part of trucking before deregulation and then part of trucking after. People who know what it's like to run on multiple logbooks illegally, which there still are companies doing that for sure, but it's just less prevalent than it once was, right? So those are the kinds of things I think of. But when I think of the actual term and the concept like of a physical steering wheel holder, I think, or like someone referring to a steering wheel holder, I picture a trucker who's probably got like really weathered skin from the sun exposure and smoking tons of cigs for years and years in the cab of their truck, and like someone who is really like put in the work, and someone who has a much more intimate understanding of a truck and driving a truck than someone like me who's a newer driver. I don't know that someone like that would look at me and say, oh, that's a steering wheel holder right there. I don't know exactly what they mean though when they say that. And I think about, there's a part of me that is being snarky that's like, yeah, I hold the shit out of this steering wheel. I hold this steering wheel so much all day, every day when I drive, that I have to keep fidgeting and stretching. How many of you stretch your hands out on the steering wheel while you're driving? You have one, you know, you're holding with both hands, but you got one of them stretching your fingers back on the steering wheel. Or somebody like my dad or some other drivers I've seen that have some kind of gloves on. My dad's wearing these copper gloves because his hands are like this, just from years and years of literally holding a steering wheel, and he has arthritis in his hands and they ache, you know. And I guess what I'm kind of going stream of consciousness here, but what this sort of leads me to thinking about is something. I think the reason why I tend to bristle is because there's a little hint of what I think of as bullying or bullying thinking. And I think that people can sort of fall into those mindsets without intending to, and I don't think that they're jerks or bad people for thinking that way. But I think that when you are somebody who has paid your dues, and then you see people coming in under completely different circumstances where you feel like they sort of slid in there, you can't help but look at them and be pissed, because you think these people came in under a much lower set of standards than I did, and which is actually not necessarily true, because like my dad was telling me when he first got his CDL or whatever it was called at the time, I don't know if it was called that, but it was like, can you shift gears? Okay, here's your CDL. Like, it wasn't, there weren't the same types of licensing requirements or expectations back then that there are now. That said, we all know, or I think a lot of us probably know, that these CDL schools just jam people through to get drivers out on the road. And for example, the CDL school that I went to, they were trying to push me to take my CDL test when I did not want to. She's like, oh, you're going to be ready next week. We're going to have you take it next week. And I was arguing with the person who ran the school, who is this real character. She was like this, I gotta tell you, she was like this Polish lady. My ex-husband's from Poland. I'm not shading Polish people. I have like an affinity for being like a de facto part of a Polish family, like straight from Poland for a decade. I have like an affection for Polish people and like Polish culture and the hustle that comes from Eastern European families and cultures. So that's where I come from in that, just FYI. But she had like so much jewelry on, and she had like this larger than life persona, and her office, there were like little evil eye things all over her office, and it was just funny. She was a character. But she also, from what I was, you know, little things that were communicated to me from my awesome instructor, this Bulgarian dude who I loved, he told me a little bit about, you know, kind of behind the scenes stuff, and basically that CDL schools, a lot of them have relationships very directly with like the Secretary of State, and that she was incentivized to get people out, to get people their license. And also I know she was incentivized because I specifically went to a school that accepted people under the WIOA grant. It's WIOA. I would highly recommend that. I don't think anyone in this country, in a country that depends so hard, sorry, this is a diversion real quick. I don't think anyone in a country that depends so deeply on truck drivers, on our labor to sustain our system, no one should go into debt, and no one should be beholden to a trucking company for a year or 2 years to get their CDL. That's bullshit. So if you're one of those people that can't afford $5,000 or $6,000 or more for CDL school, Google WIOA grant trucking. I guarantee you'll find the information you need. A lot of people qualify even if they don't know, you know, think that they would. That is how I went to CDL school. I didn't pay for it, and I could not have paid for it. So that's a side note for you. But this school was accepting people through WIOA grants. So guess what? I think it was $4,500. So every person that comes through, they're getting this grant money from the government. So they're incentivized to get you out so they can get more students in. And a couple people I've known that have taught in CDL school are like, man, you just have so many people. It's too many people. I had someone who I'm friends with now through my channel. He was teaching at a CDL school, and he told me about having like 4 students in the truck at the same time. It's like, how can you adequately train someone who's never driven a truck before when you have that many people in the truck? It's just too many distractions. So yeah, CDL schools, we all probably know that they're not necessarily giving people the information they need to be a good driver at all. They're barely teaching you what you need to know to move the truck at all. One of the biggest issues I had when I got my CDL was that I had never hauled a loaded trailer at all, and I had no understanding of the physical, you know, the actual physical experience of doing that, and it's very different. And I was constantly like almost taking out curbs because I didn't understand how to swing the trailer wide enough. I didn't understand yet the concept of driving the trailer, which I firmly believe is not something that you physically and like neurologically are capable of understanding until you do it a certain amount of times, because I think it has to do with proprioception, which is the way our bodies and our brains understand our physical interaction with the world. And your brain is learning how to feel the truck and trailer, and that takes time. There's nothing but time and experience that can teach you that. So it's crazy to take somebody who is telling you, I don't feel comfortable driving a truck yet, and being like, oh, but go get your license and go out there and drive, okay? So that was something I experienced. And so, you know, to those who are referring to steering wheel holders, well, you were talking about me. You didn't think that you were, maybe, but that's who you're talking about. You're talking about people like me who got pushed through a CDL school and would have loved to have more time and practice and have been able to be on a closed course with a loaded trailer and actually like practice backing in a real life setting versus these stupid things that they do during the CDL test, like where you're memorizing, you know, how many turns of the wheel in a certain maneuver that in theory teaches you how to back a truck, but in the reality, it doesn't at all. You never once slide your tandems or talk about how you need to adjust and balance the weight in a trailer and how that affects the ride in the truck, and these kinds of things that are like really everyday things that you will need to know when you're out here. Someone who's in CDL school now or thinking about it is watching this and being like, ah, because I'll tell you what, I remember watching videos where people were talking about pulling forward at the fuel island, and I was like so nervous hearing that. I was like, what does that mean? Because I hadn't done it. You know, it's like everything is intimidating when it's new, and that's okay, it's normal. But okay, this is getting way too long. I just want to talk a little bit about the idea of a steering wheel holder and why it sort of like rubs me the wrong way when I hear that comment. I'm speaking as a person, just to give a little background, who was like, I was bullied a fair amount as a kid. We didn't have a good home situation at the particular period of time that I was really getting bullied a lot, and things were bad at home. And I had to dread going to school because this one girl in particular used to bully the shit out of me every day because she didn't like my clothes and my hair. And I think because I went through that stuff, I have a sort of feeling of wanting to lift up the underdog. And so I recognize that there are people who have been doing this kind of work for a long time and have paid their dues and have earned a sort of place, a sort of status, whether in their own minds or in reality or whatever. And I can see how they might look at someone who, you know, came here from another country where there are different standards for drivers and driver behaviors, and they don't like to see the way those drivers act, and they feel like it's a personal affront. I have compassion for people who are in that boat, but I also have compassion for the immigrant driver who came here to seek opportunity because they couldn't get it where they came from, and who is in a process of learning how we do things here. You know, it's like I can see these things from different perspectives. And also, I think that it doesn't make sense if you're a driver who has a more technical, advanced knowledge of trucks and trucking and how to operate and maneuver a truck and how the whole industry works. Like, you really get it on a deep level. Like, I have respect for you, for real. But I don't think it's fair to then, for that driver to look at somebody who is just trying to do something that's really intimidating and really scary, and that the vast majority of people in the workforce wouldn't even have the guts to attempt. And they're doing it and like putting themselves out there so they can earn what they hope will be a good living, and most of the time they're being completely manipulated and taken advantage of by these shit-ass trucking companies. And then you're like looking down on them because they don't have the set of skills that you have, but maybe they want to, but they don't have that opportunity because they're just going to a CDL school that they can afford, or that's in their area, or that they can get to in between shifts of their job like I did, you know, whatever it might be. I think we all have to respect the hustle. And I understand if you're looking at some drivers that clearly don't have the same standards you have and being like, fuck that. I get that. I feel the same way, because I feel like we all should try to have higher standards for ourselves in whatever we're doing. Unfortunately, not everyone has that mindset. And I get it if you think, when you say steering wheel holder, you're referring to the people who are like watching a fucking movie on their phone while they're like doing this, and they're like, you know, driving down the road, or they're yapping on their headset, or not. They don't give a shit, and they're, you know, driving like shit, and they're being aggressive. Like, okay, then you can insult them because they're just being an asshole and not respecting the danger that we all pose by being out here on the road. None of us, though, is perfect. None of us has perfectly driven our truck every day and never been distracted and never made a driving mistake. not one of us. So I don't know. That's kind of all I wanted to say. It was a little bit of a diatribe and way too long of a clip, but I want to know in the comments, tell me what you think of as a steering wheel holder. Oh, part of what prompted me to talk about this was there was a guy in one of the trainings I went to at one of the companies I worked at that had only been driving like the same amount of time as me, like a year and a half or whatever, and was like, oh, these steering wheel holder window licking crayon eaters. That was like the exact phrase he said. And I was like, bro, what do you mean steering wheel holder? Like, you're not out here driving some fucking 13 speed or whatever speed long nose Pete like a pimp out here. You're not doing that. You're holding the steering wheel right alongside me. So get the fuck out of here. Anyway, all right, that's all I got. I hope you guys are doing well. I'm gonna put this down and it's chill time, baby. I'll talk to you later.